Hello everyone, Professor Krzlik here. So I've made a video about how people are involved in politics, different ways they participate in politics, whether it's voting, protest, contacting the Congress members. And so I wanted to make a video now about how we get our political ideologies and our political views. And so I wanted to focus on political socialization, which is really the process by which individuals acquire political attitudes, political values, their beliefs, and what really drives that behavior, whether it's voting or being involved in politics. So, political socialization is really a lifelong occurrence. It occurs really from the time we're young, from before we even understand what politics is, from before we have really any political ideology, or at least a strong political ideology. We are being shaped by outside influences. We're being shaped by institutions. We are being shaped by our environment that is politically socializing us. So these shape how we see the government, how we see politics, how we see authority, how we have a sense or a lack of a sense of civic duty, and a lack of or a strong sense in political participation. Really, when we're thinking about how we get involved in politics, if we are involved in politics, what political party, what political values we have, this is all rooted in and built in political socialization. So when we think about some of these key agents of political socialization, which is oftentimes how American government or political science textbooks talks about these things, they call them agents of political socialization. So really from a young age, we are being politically socialized by our family. This is really from an early period of our life, a key and significant early influence. Our parents pass down political values, maybe even political identification, ideology, maybe civic norms. From a young age, maybe you or people in your family went to the voting booths with your parents, instilling the civic norm from a very young age of the importance of political participation. Ideology can come from your parents, your values can come from your parents, even if your parents aren't like telling you which political party to support from a young age. We know the values that parents pass down to their children play a role in political socialization. So the empirical evidence shows that children often mirror their parents' political views, especially when both parents agree on those political views. Now, that doesn't mean like as you get older, you don't push back or you don't change. And many people have different political views than their parents, different political party affiliations than their parents. But at least from a young age, from this early political socialization aspect, when children are young, they are oftentimes similar views to their parents because the parents are giving them that political socialization from a young age. Okay, so what else? So parents, education in schools. When we think about being a member of a democracy and voting and being engaged in civic participation, schools play a role in this. Education plays a role in this. School and the education process promotes civic knowledge, promotes national identity, promotes national belonging. Curriculum that are at school oftentimes emphasizes some sort of political history, institutions, democratic values, the importance of being a member of a society in a democratic system. We also see that if our family plays a big role from a young age, education is really where we start to see Students may be understanding their own political path and finding their own political path in life. We also see that with higher education, we see that there is a correlation with higher voter participation and more liberal attitudes. So we see that in the empirical evidence, we see that in the research, that higher education is correlated with higher political participation. So maybe people vote more, they call their senators, they call their elected representatives, maybe they go to town halls, they go to civic organizations, and they have a tendency to have more liberal attitudes. So we see family plays a role, we see education plays a role. Our peers and our social groups also play a role. This can be our friends, our coworkers, our peer networks can reinforce, but they can also challenge our views of the world. Peer influence tends to grow in adolescence, early childhood. So, as we're maybe in our formative years with our parents, and then we go to school, but probably maybe before the university, before we really start to challenge those views. Social identity groups, whether gender, religion, class, also help shape our political identities. So what I wanted to spend a minute on here and maybe dig into it a little bit deeper is media. So of course, in the introductory textbooks, if we were just using really any American government textbook, any intro to political science textbooks, they would focus on these things: family, peer groups, education, but they also focus on media. So this is big in American government, this is big in comparative politics, this is big in introduction to political science courses. This role of the media, because the media is a major source of political information. It's a major source of framing, talking about issues in a particular way. We all know that if we watch, say, MSNBC versus CNN versus Fox News versus One American News Network, they might cover the same thing but very differently, because how media frames issues plays a role in how we think about these issues. So when we think about framing, when we think about coverage, when we think about how media plays a role in our political socialization, this can mean traditional media, say TV that we sit down and watch, maybe we watch online, but still traditional media, legacy media, newspapers, versus maybe social media, podcasts, new media that maybe a younger generation gets their news from. So when we think about how media is politically socializing, it influences what people think about. This is called agenda setting in political science, and how they interpret the news. This is called framing. So what we sit down, when we're watching the news and we sit down and we're exposed to, is this idea that the media is shaping what we think is important. And we see this before elections, certain things that media stations cover, conveying this narrative to the audience that this is what's important, conveying to the audience this is what you should be thinking about. That plays a role in socializing voters and socializing citizens to pay more attention to that. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit further. Part of this can be what we think of as like cable news polarization. As I mentioned, if we tune into Fox News versus MSNBC, we're going to have quite distinct ideological differences and quite distinct perspectives on what's important. So why do we tune in? Oftentimes, viewers choose outlets that reinforce our pre-existing beliefs, deepening our kind of the political participation, but the ideological bend that we already have. So if you're more conservative, maybe you tune into Fox News because you will hear things that reinforce your worldview already. Maybe if you're more liberal, you'll tune into MSNBC because it just simply reinforces the worldview that you already have. So if we think about political socialization, from a young age, we're being politically socialized. Our value system is being built. This is going from when we're young kids to our adolescence to university. And then as adults, or maybe even as college students or teenagers, we start to silo ourselves into places where we are more comfortable. Maybe we don't want our values challenged as much. This does create echo chambers that socialize viewers into distinct camps, and that can be hard to break because human beings don't like to be told they're wrong. And there is a push across many parts of society to, okay, how do we step out of our echo chambers? How do we expose ourselves to views that maybe or challenge our pre-existing beliefs? But that takes some effort, and that takes some excuse me, sorry, that takes us wanting to be at an uncomfortable place. So traditional media, cable news absolutely plays a role in political socialization. Interestingly, with the emergence of social media, especially 2015, 2016 on, we do see the platforms of Twitter, X, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram serving as a way for political socialization. When we think about the role of social media, we can connect with others that we agree with, and we can connect with a wide variety of people that maybe still further us into our own echo chambers, because we make friends with people that we already agree with. We join organizations we already agree with. However, social media also allows us to debate and discuss, connect with others that maybe we don't agree with. It also allows us to knock down some of the gatekeepers that conventional media had. So that is, when we think about political science, when we think about politics, that is seemingly one of the benefits of unorthodox media, that it knocks down some of those gatekeepers. So if you want to have a YouTube news show, you can have a YouTube news show that you get to talk with others. If you want to run a Twitter page or an X page or a Blue Sky page where people talk about politics, you can do that, and you have that ability now in a way that you didn't have in the past. A downside of this, though, is the proliferation of misinformation and conspiracy theories. So if we're thinking about political socialization, about where our views come from, about why and how we grow our political ideologies and our political thoughts, we do see with the emergence of social media just proliferation of conspiracy theories, of misinformation. We've all encountered things online that are factually incorrect, not just like they have a different opinion, a different way of looking at the world, but literally made up. And with the rise of AI, this is going to become increasingly difficult to understand what is real and what isn't real. The use of AI to impersonate people, to impersonate leaders, to impersonate and really fake positions and fake occurrences. This will make understanding and detecting misinformation all the harder. But for now, when we think about misinformation, we see that this factually incorrect information can influence and does influence how people view the world and view politics. So it does play a role in political socialization. So media absolutely plays a role. So what else plays a role? Religion, of course, plays a role. So people's engagement with whichever religion they subscribe to plays a role in their political socialization. And lastly, that plays quite a role in political socialization are events and experiences. Historical events, wars, economic crises, 9/11, COVID-19 really can shape political views. So as you're aging, the political views, the political ideologies you have can, of course, change. But by the time you're in your mid 20s to your 30s, you're usually starting to have pretty solid political ideologies that shift over time and can shift over time, but not drastically. These shifts are usually at the margins. Your fundamental beliefs usually are set by then. However, big events can shift people's political socialization, can shift people's views of the world. 9/11, of course, shifted Americans' desire to have a stronger national security state, maybe at the expense of personal liberties. COVID-19 absolutely shaped people's views about the role of the government. We saw an increase in the role of government, more state intervention, state intervention into the economy. And we saw people support government intervention into the economy who had previously been of the mindset that the state shouldn't intervene in the economy. And this happened relatively quickly because life events shifted their views of what the government should be doing. So when we think about political socialization, I just wanted to make a quick video here. These points, although each one of them could be broken down further, and there's always outliers that proves this didn't shape this person's view. In the political science literature, these are really some of the big forces that shape people's views about the political system, who they vote for, if they vote. So yeah, thank you for watching. I just wanted to talk about that.